Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Grey Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 10th of July, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So to kick things off today, we have a reminder here from ETHStaker, a reminder tweet basically, where they said, did you know that members of ETHStaker have released audited, free, and open source software to help you set up your Solo validator, such as the Wagyu KenGen is the staking deposit CLI on easy mode, which is basically the tool to generate your keys, your validator keys, and ETHDocker and ETHWizard are software that automate the staking process and guide you through it. And these projects are linked here on the tweet, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. And I have talked about the ETHWizard project before from Remy Roy, who works at ETHStaker and is part of obviously the ETHStaker kind of community here in Suites. I hadn't heard of Wagyu KenGen before. I think I may have heard of it before, but I haven't personally used it before. But definitely, if ETHStaker is vouching for it, I can vouch for it as well. ETHStaker is the best, I think, staking community in Ethereum. I haven't seen anyone doing as much as they're doing in the Ethereum staking community here. But yeah, there is GitHub links. There's a website link here. This is the GitHub link for the Wagyu KenGen, and then you have the overview of ETHDocker, which is another project, and of course the ETHWizard project, which, as I said, I've highlighted on the refill before. So if you guys are at all interested in getting started with solo staking, if you've got that 32 ETH and you're just thinking about, okay, I've got 32 ETH, but I'm not entirely sure on the technical side of things, and maybe you've looked at some guides and they're still maybe too complex for you, something like Summer ESAT's guides or CoinCashew's guides, which, look, I'm not going to say they're easy to follow in respect to if you're not used to using the command line, if you're not used to a lot of, like computer stuff, right? Like not just clicking GUIs, but getting diving deep into the computery stuff or the techie stuff, then those guides may not be the easiest thing to follow along with. That's why something like ETHWizard may appeal to you, because it's trying to make everything as easy as possible for setting up a solo validator on your own. Now, of course, you can use other services as well, as I've talked about before, like DAppNode and things like that. But yeah, I mean, if you don't want to use DAppNode or for whatever reason you want to use something else, then there is other things available here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to go check out. Yeah, as I said, I can put my weight behind these products, and ETHStaker is a great community that you should definitely be a part of. Join their Discord channel if you have any questions about staking. They're always happy to help with that. Alright, so over the weekend, Aragon put out their updated roadmap for 2023. Now, I highlighted this roadmap a few months ago now, but basically there has been a few key changes here. So they said the first change was that from 2 to 1 major upgrades of our execution layer, which will be named Aragon 3, previously Aragon 4. So they seem to have basically, I guess, cut down on a bit of the bloat here on their roadmap and made it and collapsed everything that was Aragon 4 into Aragon 3. And they've introduced something called Kaplan, which is our consensus layer that is designed to run as a single process with Aragon 3 or as a separate process. So yeah, it seems like the Aragon team is now building a consensus layer client. You can see here, Kaplan is on the right-hand side as part of the Aragon 3 effort, where they said it is a consensus-driven engine and embedded full consensus clients, and it has all these nifty features here that you can check out. I'll link that in the YouTube description below. But yeah, pretty cool that we're even getting another consensus layer client from the Aragon team here. And I said before that I think we already have maybe enough clients. Not that I'm saying that we shouldn't have more of them. And I think that the reason Aragon may be doing this is because Kaplan may help them to make Aragon a better execution layer client, because let's say you're running Aragon, right? And maybe you want, and obviously Aragon is targeting archive node users and things like that. Let's say that you obviously need to pair that with a consensus layer client. Maybe Kaplan will run just a lot better than another consensus layer client on Aragon specifically. That might be a reason there, and maybe something that they're using as a way to skill up when it comes to consensus layer things, because there is cross pollination between the execution layer, consensus layer client teams, but it's probably not as much as maybe not it should be, but like it can be, right? Because at the end of the day, these two things talk to each other, and there's specs that the client teams follow and everything like that. But outside of that, from my understanding, there's no real need for, say, the Geth team to understand how Prism works, or to know how to build Prism or anything like that. Just like there's no real need for Prism to understand the intricacies of Geth. Obviously, they need to understand the high level stuff, but from what I've seen, it's not like there's a huge amount of cross pollination when they're all working together in terms of working on each other's code and stuff like that. It's more that they work to the spec, they make sure that their clients can talk to each other, and they continue on from there. But yeah, cool to see this new effort from Aragon here. But in terms of what they're working on right now, it's mostly part of, I guess, like Aragon 2 and Aragon 3. Aragon 1, I guess you can call it, is in the past. It's basically what's been live for a while now. Aragon 2 is, I guess, moving target here. But basically includes a bunch of nifty upgrades like faster syncing time for the archive node and lower disk footprint. And then Aragon 3 is their big upgrade, which you can see here that they're focusing a lot of their time on. And they've also got here that Autoscan is embedded. Now, I've mentioned Autoscan on the Reaper before. It's basically a open source block explorer that you can run locally. So you basically go to the GitHub page, you download it, you run it locally, and then you can obviously talk to your own node and be able to use a block explorer without having to rely on something like Etherscan. Now, of course, if you want more data around, I guess, like the historical state of the blockchain, then you need to run it paired with an archive node, not just a full node, or you need to get some snapshots from somewhere, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose, right, of doing it all on your own and being a self-sovereign kind of block explorer. So it's cool to see that that's being directly embedded into Aragon here. And it seems that as part of the Aragon 3 roadmap, the team is also working on clients for Gnosis Chain and Polygon. Now, Polygon, I would assume this means the POS chain, and I wonder how that changes things for them, given that the POS chain is going to become a Validium. Obviously, it still needs a client, but I'm wondering how that changes things. I don't think it would change things too drastically for them. They'll probably still be able to build a similar client, if not maybe the same client as they're building now, but it's good to see them supporting multiple chains here. But anyway, you can check out the full roadmap for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, Tony here has put out an ETH research post that is titled, I'm just loading it up here so I can get the title, Selfish Mixing and RANDAO Manipulation. And there's a TLDR at the top here for what this is. Now, for those of you who don't know what RANDAO is, Tony explains. He says the RANDAO plays an integral role in Ethereum, providing the necessary randomness for the selection of proposers and committees. And then Tony continues in saying, I looked into the possibility of RANDAO manipulation and carried out a variety of simulations using historical data. And those are all done in this ETH research post, which you can check out. There is a lot of technical mathy stuff here, so this may not be something that is easily digestible, but the reason why I bring this up, not only to highlight the post here, but also because I wanted to kind of give a bit more background here. So as Tony says here, RANDAO is responsible for providing that randomness for the selection of proposers and committees. So basically the proposal of a block and being part of a sync committee here. Now, the reason why we need a source of randomness is because if you didn't have a source of randomness, you would be able to essentially either game the outcome or know the outcome ahead of time and then use that to your advantage in some economical way or something like that. So obviously we need randomness there. Now, what Tony's done in this post is basically model out what this would look like if RANDAO was manipulated. And I think the TLDR, I mean, from my understanding of the post, I did gloss over it because honestly, I don't understand this math. Like this equation here, this is just wizardry to me. I don't know math. But from my understanding and from some of the comments that I saw, basically, you could, in theory, manipulate RANDAO or manipulate it so that you knew, if you had enough validators, if you had enough share of the network, that you knew ahead of time, or a long time ahead of time, that you were going to propose a block or be part of a sync committee and do some funky stuff around that. But the thing is that, like, it's not just the knowledge of that, it's also the economic, I guess, output of that. So is it worth, basically in plain English, is it worth your time and your effort and all these other second order consequences that would happen from you trying to manipulate the Ethereum chain? Is the economic benefit worth it? And I think, like, pretty much all the time it's not. It's better just to go along with everyone else, right? And it's better to play, it's kind of like a prisoner's dilemma, right? It's better to just play the game fairly. It's better to do the 3-3, I'm sure you've seen that meme before, than defect and do your own thing, because in the long run, it's better for you. Even and you're still being selfish, right? You're still doing things for yourself. You're still being profit maximizing by doing it that way, but it's good. It's still good for the health of the network. It's not manipulating anything. It's not trying to destabilize the chain or anything like that. So really, even in theory, if it is possible to do some kind of manipulation here, it doesn't actually make sense from a crypto economic perspective, and it also doesn't really make sense from the probability of you actually making any money from it as well, even if it was worth it. Like, let's say you had like a 5% chance of being able to manipulate RANDAO in such a way that it gives you an expected profit of such and such. Is it actually worth it to do that? Because what would actually happen if you were caught doing that is that because the incentives are the way they are with Ethereum staking, people would just unstake from you, basically. So let's just give an example of a centralized exchange engaging this in this behavior. What do you think would happen? Everyone would just withdraw their stake, and if their stake was withheld, then the derivative token would probably trade at a pretty steep discount, like CBETH or BETH from Binance, for example, as centralized exchange LSTs, or there would be lawsuits against that company, or any other number of kind of second order consequences there. But then on top of that, even if they didn't withhold the stake, and people would say, oh, no one's going to withdraw because no one knows what's going on. Like, yes, they will. I'm not sure if you guys saw what happened with Coinbase, but the SEC going after Coinbase for their staking products actually spooked a fair few people, and Coinbase's staking market share has gone down because of that. So if the Coinbase, just as an example, right, I'm not singling out Coinbase here, but for example, if Coinbase was to do any kind of manipulation here, you bet your ass a lot of people would withdraw their stake because they don't want to be part of that. They don't want to run the risk of potentially being slashed or socially slashed. As far as I know, there's no in-protocol technical slashing for RANDAO manipulation. I don't think it's actually possible to do that. But in terms of social slashing, that would of course be possible. If it was a big enough threat, if it was something that was being actively done, the community would come together and socially slash the perpetrators of that. I have no doubt about that. Even though I've talked about how social slashing is the nuclear option, if something is destabilizing the chain, then the nuclear option needs to be used if there is no other way to stop this from happening, right? In a timely manner as well, because time is always of the essence. But as Tony's post points out, as a few other kind of things that I've seen around this points out, it pretty much is never worth it economically, reputationally. The chances are just very low for the expected benefit here, and it's much better for you just to go with the flow, just to continue playing by the rules and earning the profit that way, rather than potentially blowing up your business if you're an exchange service, right? Opening yourselves up to lawsuits and legal liability and all that sorts of stuff. So it's just better to go with the flow. Now, of course, that works in pretty much like all scenarios, except for a scenario where it's like a nation state doing it, right? And that's always the final boss, is when it's like a nation state, because in that world, it means that the nation state doesn't give a shit about the laws because they are the law, really. I mean, at the end of the day, if they're doing something like this, then maybe they have to answer in some court, but it's very different, right? Like, I wish it wasn't different, but it is different, especially if it's nation states that aren't a democracy, right? It's even more different in there. I mean, imagine North Korea doing something like this. We've seen North Korea very active in crypto. Imagine them doing something like this. They don't care about the legal consequences of this. They're threatening to launch nukes. Like, they don't care about the legal consequences of this. No one's going to stop them, right? And it's easy for them, not easy for them to do this, but it is open to them to do this because it's running on the internet, obviously, right? And it's in the digital age where it's, you're going to be able to control any access here. But it's not just them. It's just generally, when thinking about nation states, that is the final boss. Whether they're big or small, it doesn't necessarily matter. It depends on how much damage they could do. I mean, for example, if you talk about like the US government, I mean, they could, in theory, right? Obviously, this wouldn't be. When I say this wouldn't be legal for them to do, they can make it legal for them to do this. But let's say they went and just seized all the validators from all US-based staking services, including Coinbase and Kraken, but also all of the Lido node operators, and all of the other staking services that are based in the US. Let's say they seized all those validators. I don't know how much percentage that would give them of the network, but it's probably a healthy percent. It's probably like 20, 25, 30% potentially, right, of the network. And then let's say they engaged in something like RANDAO manipulation in order to destabilize the chain. Well, in that world where that happened, right, you bet your ass a social slashing kind of mechanism would be used in that world, just simply because there would be no other way to deal with this. If the US government has come along and seized these things, the only way the community can react is by kicking them out of the validator set. And then for them to re-enter and gain that same amount of stake again would be extremely hard and and very expensive even for them. They still have to kind of spend money on these sorts of stuff, right? So yeah. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of me saying that this kind of thing, when you model it out, just not something to worry about too much, but definitely something that can be hardened at the protocol level. We could look for different sources of randomness or better sources of randomness, which I think there's been a bit of research on, but I don't have that handy right now. But yeah, that's just some, I guess, like context around RANDAO manipulation. All right, speaking of Ethereum research things, the Ethereum Foundation research team will host another Reddit AMA on July 12th at 1 p.m. UTC. Now you can go check this link out for yourself and save the date and time here. This is very close actually. This is what, two days away or so. So it's happening quite soon. You can go into this Reddit thread, ask your questions ahead of time, get them answered by the entire Ethereum research team here. And this is the 10th AMA that we'll have been doing in the last, I think they've been doing this for 2 or 3 years now. I remember the first one that they did, it was just so good when they started doing these because they really do go in depth with the answers that they give on these AMAs. It's not just like a throwaway answer where they like link to a post or say, this is what's happening here and don't give any context around it. They give very detailed context and very context-driven answers. And it's not just one person answering you either. It could be Justin answering a question along with Danny Ryan and Tim Beiko and Vitalik and all the other researchers. They could be in there and they're answering the questions in their own way. So if you want to ask a question, go ask it. If not, just wait 2 or 3 days till it's all been answered, and then the whole AMA is there, and you can read through it, and for sure you'll learn a lot from it. I mean, I learn heaps from it every time I read it, and it is a really nice view into what the Ethereum researchers at the Ethereum Foundation are actively thinking about and working on. All right, moving on to the biggest announcement over the weekend, which actually happened just before I put out last week's refuel. So I had already recorded it and then I saw this. But Gitcoin has launched something called the Public Goods Network, which is a community-led L2 ecosystem for public goods maxis. TLDR, Gitcoin is launching an L2 built on the OP stack called the Public Goods Network, or PGN. This is really cool and has been a long time coming. I remember in 2020, there was a tweet from Vitalik, and the reason why I remember this is because I saw a tweet again from Vitalik just over the weekend, where he said quadratic funding was like an experiment, or quadratic funding funded by the ecosystem was an experiment. The end game is for quadratic funding to be funded by sequencer fees from L2s. And that's exactly what could happen in this world with PGN. Because as an L2 network, obviously there will be sequences, and those sequences will earn fee revenue. And let's just say the sequences are set up so that a portion of that fee revenue, if not the majority of it, goes to a public goods pool. So let's say there's obviously Gitcoin live on there. There's the Protocol Guild live on there. There's other public goods initiatives live on there. Just any public goods project you can think of. And then it's a generalized chain for public goods networks. People are doing payments on there, donating to people. There's people doing their own initiatives, like kind of like a GoFundMe network, so to speak, right? It could touch it real life or just crypto, all that sort of stuff. And all that activity is generating fees that could go to public goods, just like Optimism is doing when they're running their centralized sequencer right now. They're donating all of the proceeds to public goods funding. So this is exactly what can happen with the public goods network here. And some people brought up objections to it, saying that why would anyone use the public goods network when they could use something like Arbitrum One or Optimism to do DeFi stuff and things like that? And I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. I don't expect the public goods network to be like a DeFi hub or anything like that. Sure, Uniswap will probably be deployed there, and a few of the other popular DeFi apps will probably be deployed there just to enable the use cases of what the public goods are trying to do, what the public goods apps are trying to do. But the public goods network is not trying to be a DeFi chain. It is not trying to be an NFT chain. It is trying to be a public goods chain, essentially, right? And then they detailed this vision more in this Twitter thread here, going deeper about it here, as well as the website at publicgoods.network. And it only makes sense for them to build this on top of OP Stack, I believe, since Optimism is all about public goods. They have been for quite a while now. They're definitely at the forefront of experimenting with different public goods funding mechanisms and coordination mechanisms and all that good stuff there. So yeah, this was just honestly really cool and really something that, oftentimes I look at things in crypto and I kind of think to myself, there's a lot out there that I look at and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is interesting, but like, I don't get that buzz about it a lot of the time these days, especially me, because I'm like a boomer in crypto at this point. But it takes a little bit for me to get a buzz out of something. And by buzz, I mean something that makes me think, wow, okay, this is actually different, right? This is actually something that could push positive forward change on not push positive change forward on not just the speculative front or the finance front, but something that actually touches people in a different way, right? And touches on their values, right? Their values, and scale that out to a global network of people. And that's exactly what things like the Public Goods Network can do. I mean, that's why I'm Public Goods Maxi, right? I've always promoted and talked about Gitcoin. I've always promoted and talked about Protocol Guild. I've tried to contribute in my own ways, encourage you guys to contribute to it, and all that good stuff there. But we needed a scalable way. We needed a way to scale this to the world, which is what the Public Goods Network is trying to do. We needed to foster an ecosystem that goes beyond just Ethereum L1, which priced out a lot of people. Obviously, if you tried to donate on Gitcoin, you were priced out a lot of it because of the fees and stuff like that. But we need to do all that. And that's exactly what the Public Goods Network is trying to do here. And I really do want to stress that this isn't just a crypto thing. That Gitcoin team, and I guess like anyone that's working on this, what they're really trying to do is scale this out to have real world impact. They don't want to just be limited to crypto, because for better or worse, I guess the majority of crypto is speculative right now, and there is a way to turn that speculation into public goods funding. We call it regen finance or regenerative finance, which is something I've done before. When I did my NFT mint for the 1-year anniversary NFT, I donated all the proceeds to public goods, and I basically was banking on that speculation. People buying the NFT because they were speculating on it going up in value, even though I said that it was just like an anniversary NFT, right? I wasn't creating it to be speculative, but I was harnessing a little bit of that degen behavior for regen efforts, right? And there's plenty of other examples of this happening, like Optimism, obviously, with the sequencer fees and stuff like that, are going to public goods. So how can we do more of that within, crypto, but also outside of crypto? And outside of crypto, it doesn't have to be just harnessing degen behavior. You can literally get these organizations from all around the world that are trying to do public goods things within their communities and get them on chain, onboard them to Public Goods Network, offer them those low fees and fast transactions, and basically get them using Ethereum to scale up and coordinate their public goods networks or public goods, I guess, like foundations or whatever they're trying to do, which is why I said before, it's rare for something to give me that like true buzz, but this definitely did when I saw it, and I'm super excited to see how this evolves. I'm going to be getting involved with it as much as I can, but you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, Connext has announced something over the weekend. So they've quote tweeted Arjun here, who is the one of the founders of the Connext network, talking about the recent multi-chain exploit. This is the second exploit multi-chain has had, the cross-chain kind of bridge protocol here, and I think this was a multi-sig kind of compromise, or a key compromise on multi-sigs. But Arjun goes here and says that, says here that the multi-chain hack is a sad reminder for the systemic risks tokens face from bridges. And then he says, we believe these risks stem from a single underlying problem, token sovereignty. We're proposing ERC 7281, aka XR ERC 20, an open standard to fix this. So essentially what ERC 20 enables is tokens can seamlessly move across chains with no slippage, fungibility of tokens between bridges, such as third-party or canonical, token issuers get granular control over their token security, and scalability to a 1,000 plus roll-up chain world. And Arjun has more information about this in his own tweet thread and how this will work, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But this makes a lot of sense, I think. There definitely needs to be a standard that people adopt and that projects adopt for cross-chain bridging. Because as I've said before, it's not great how it currently works, right? There's IOUs on top of IOUs. The ultimate source of where that asset actually lives is usually the the network that it was issued on. So, for example, ETH is only issued on the Ethereum network. So ETH that exists on any other network out there is not true ETH, right? Unless the ETH is actually provably burned on the Ethereum side of things, then what you have on, let's say, another L1 as ETH that's been provably burned, you have, I guess, like the real ETH, because it doesn't exist anymore on Ethereum, but it's still not the real ETH because, I mean, it's on another chain, it is not secured by Ethereum. See what I mean? It gets really murky when you think about it, but the way most of these things work is that there's no burn for, especially when you're going from from an from Ethereum to another L1, what ends up happening is that you send tokens to a smart contract on Ethereum or ETH to a smart contract on Ethereum. It gets locked there, and then you get issued an IOU on this other chain, and you can only unlock the coins on Ethereum by bridging back from the other chain and kind of swapping that IOU back there. So that's not ideal either, because then there's just IOUs and IOUs. There's massive honeypots for these assets, right? It's just, and there's fragmented liquidity. There's just so much stuff that happens that is just not great, right? Definitely not great. And that's why Arjun and I guess like the next account here is talking about ERC-7281 as a way to fix this. And if you want to learn more details about how they're actually fixing this from a technical point of view, you can read Arjun's tweet thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to do so. It's got a bunch of helpful diagrams here as well that I can't speak to you, and you can just go see for yourself, and it'll give you a great primer and breakdown of how this all works. All right, just wanted to give a heads up here that there is a new scam going around, unfortunately. So the Revoke.cash Twitter account said, yesterday we received reports of people seeing unknown approval transactions in their transaction history. It turns out this is a new scam where scammers use so-called gas tokens to steal money when victims revoke these quote-unquote fake approvals. And then Revoke Cash continues, fortunately, many of these approvals weren't showing up in Revoke since they were filtered out based on heuristics, but a few always slip through the cracks. So to combat this scam, we've just added a check that disables revoking approvals if there's an excessive gas fee. So I actually didn't know this, that Revoke.cash has a system where they basically filter out things based on a bunch of heuristics here to protect users. That's really cool. And they've added this new feature to protect against this new scam. But generally, when you see these sorts of stuff, guys, happen to you, and this, I believe, can't happen on Ethereum because Ethereum disabled gas tokens. It's happening on other EVM chains. But essentially, when you see on like Etherscan or something like that, something being approved that you didn't approve yourself, it's like almost, I mean, it pretty much is a scam, because like if you didn't approve it yourself, then it's a spoofed transaction on Etherscan that basically shows that you approved something, and then what you do is you go and attempt to unapprove it on Revoke.cash or wherever else, and then you end up getting scammed out of your money for doing that. So do be careful when using these Revoke sites. Make sure that you're revoking something that you actually approved yourself, and it's not just a fake revoke or anything like that. Which is common here, and you should be managing your addresses health regularly as well with approvals. You should definitely be revoking things, approvals to things that you haven't used in a long time, or things that you used once and you probably don't plan to use it again on that address or anything like that. But honestly, if you don't want to deal with the hassle of that, you can literally just start new a lot of the time. You could send all your assets to another address and then just start again. You'll have to approve everything again, but then you don't have any approvals on that new address. So that could be an option for you as well, right? But yeah, just you can go read this Twitter thread from Revoke.cash to learn more information about this scam, but just something that I figured was worth highlighting for you guys, because I always love to highlight this stuff to make sure that you guys are being protected from all sorts of scams in the crypto ecosystem. All right, finally here, just a shout out that I was on the Bankless Weekly Rollup with Ryan Sean Adams. This is the first rollup I did with Ryan. I'm actually going to be on again this week, but if you missed this one or haven't checked it out yet, feel free to do so. Ryan and I had a pretty long discussion. It was almost a 2-hour long discussion about all things that happened last week in crypto, from the Gary Gensler resigning rumors to the BlackRock stuff, and lots of other stuff like NFTs and things like that. So definitely go check out that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.